Hey guys, thank you so much and welcome to the Game Your Future podcast. I'm Daniel, and here at this podcast, we're all about helping gamers realize their full potential. And today, joined by Amanda Reed. And Amanda started Reed Mobile Marketing and is the owner of Reed Mobile Marketing, teaches marketing and business growth tactics, especially around gamification, which we're very excited to see today. So, Amanda, welcome and tell us more about yourself.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me here. As you said, I started my marketing agency a little over 16 years ago as a single mom with five very young kids. So while I'm not as much in the gamer industry as a lot of people, I've obviously been able to watch teenage and now young 20-something-year-old sons be very heavily into the gamer world. And so I've been exposed to it a lot. And really, our passion is just to help small businesses beat big brands. So we want to help them win. And that's a lot of what we do. I'm also the author of Unapologetically Me, a book that I wrote to help other moms figure out how to balance the idea of business and being a mom at the same time.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you so much, Amanda. And so, for those that don't know, and especially for the gamer audience, would may have heard this term gamification. So gamers understand gaming, but how does that translate to business? What is this gamification for those that may not know?
Yeah, no, I love that. I think a gamification is basically how do we reward people for taking certain actions, right? How do we gamify, make business or life like a game? So what are we doing to reward you to take certain actions? And we're really rewarding people for taking the steps that we want them to do. What do we want them to do? So a typical example might be a loyalty program, right? When you go in and a store is going to say, hey, if you spend so much, we're going to give you this free thing. Or if you do this, we're going to give you this free thing. So they're gamifying you spending money with them, right? They're making it basically a reward and a game to do that. And so in business and in marketing, finding different ways where we can reward people for certain things helps them start to take the actions that we want them to do. I think you're muted.
Whoops, there we go. So, in its simplest version, you're saying like the gamification is kind of like a loyalty program, like buy nine coffees, get the 10th one free kind of thing, is in a very simple form, right?
Yeah, in a very, very simple form, but
Mhm.
also like take that into different levels, right? So we have online membership programs. So we basically reward people by giving them points for logging in each day or completing assignments as far as learning the different marketing aspects that we're teaching them. We also gamify our ads. So if we're running paid advertising on Facebook or Instagram or those sorts of things. When someone enters into that or fills out a form, we'll give them rewards for sharing that on their social media, for example. So
Okay. Oh, that's
finding
very
different
cool.
ways where we can reward people for taking the actions we want is the simplest form of gamification.
Gotcha. Okay. So then, so how did the idea of use of gamification, I guess, come about for you? Like, and maybe I'll say, so being a non-gamer, right? So it's very curious that like, oh, how do other people come about this idea of using this gamified system? And maybe like an additional question to that is like, so what kind of hobbies do you have that you draw like inspiration from when you're trying to do this kind of gamification?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think some of it started without really calling it gamification. So we've always been really big into rewards, giveaways, contests, and then how do I, when I get someone to take that initial first step, how do I continue to get them to take additional steps? So we always had rewards and point systems, and we kind of just then started to say, hey, this is a lot like similar video games. And actually, I went to one of my employees and basically said, okay, tell me, like, what is a list of, like, put this gamification terms in what you would have a game, like how you'd get rewarded in a video game, and put it in a list for me. And then we took it and said, okay, how do we apply this to the memberships we have or with our clients or for our clients into what they're doing with their customers and clients? And so that's really where it started and how we started to really extrapolate it into all these different things. And I still have lists of stuff that we're probably not going to be implementing because it would be a whole project to implement it, but it's fun to
Yep.
look at it. And I guess to 2.0 of your question,
Hmm.
um, really, I'm a huge sports fan. So I think
Okay.
understanding, while it's not gaming as far as on a computer, understanding games and sports and things like that, I spend a lot of time watching, strategizing, understanding. I'm very sad football season's over. So
Yeah.
we really, I think that I'm very in that world and in the like, how do people win mindset.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So as far as winning mindset and so using these kind of gaming terms, whether it's yeah, I think you had mentioned to me separately as far as like, leveling up or beating the boss. So what is I guess can you describe that kind of in your marketing terms and how that helps with your helping your clients?
Yeah. So oftentimes, in business or in life, right, we have kind of a ceiling and we don't really know why we can't break through it, but we're stuck there. In order to level up, we have to learn a skill or figure out something else. It might be paying somebody, it might be bringing in an employee, but we have to have something that gets us to go over that. And it generally comes in with a skill deficiency or an employee deficiency, right? So we just don't know how to run ads, or we don't know how to convert all these sales. We don't know what to do. So once we learn that skill, we actually get to level up our business. The interesting thing about that is there's always going to be a next place where we have to level up. And so what happens, I call it like beating the boss, right? Each level of a game, and oftentimes, like the first level, it's easiest to beat the boss, right? That boss is the easiest level. And so we get that instant feedback, like that positive reinforcement, like, yes, I can do this. But oftentimes, what we do in business is we get to that next level. And instead of saying, like, hey, I have to beat this boss and break through it, we just go back and start over. So it's like going back and starting at level one instead of like beating the next boss and leveling up again. So the more in business, and I believe in life, instead of going back and rebeating the bosses we've already beat, we just need to figure out the skills that it takes to beat the next boss so we can level up.
Right. And so I think and to use kind of a gaming term to maybe help give an analogy there. So what you're talking about going back and like rebeating the same boss, right? There's a couple of gaming terms that we could use so to put it in that vernacular. One could be just and I think a entrepreneur term is the grinding, right? So just
Yeah.
simply just grinding it out. So like, okay, you beat the first boss, great, but you're not quite good enough to do the second boss yet. So you'll grind out the experience, right? And you'll go back and do it again and again, just so that you can have those skills to get to the second boss. Additionally, there's something in gaming that we like to call a lot of RPGs, I guess, that use what's called New Game Plus, which is all right, you beat the game, this is usually when you've beaten the game. You can go back there and play the game again, but now you have all the knowledge and all like the skills. And depending on the game, like sometimes you get to bring like your money with you, like you get to do all these cool things. So, so as far as leveling up and beating the boss, like I guess how does that, yeah, how do you think is on that side of it as far as like okay, but I can go grind it out and beat the boss again until I'm ready for the next one, right? Or is there a better strategy that you found?
Well, so what I would say, yes, we can grind it out and beat the boss again, but we're still going to be stuck at that level, right? Because we're not learning the next thing. So in a video game, I don't I mean, I go back to like Mario Brothers, right? Like we always, when we beat the boss, we went to the next level, but there was kind of a save point there, right? I could always go back to that point, but I couldn't get to the next level without figuring out that level of the game, right? And so looking at a video game as well, yes, maybe when you get all the way through and you beat it, you can start over, but are you going to start back at the beginning if you haven't beat it yet? Or are you going to start from where you are and get to the point where you beat it? And see, the thing with business is oftentimes we just decide to go back to the easy point and start back over. So if I've figured out how to get clients a couple ways, I just go back there and can't really level it up because I'm doing something that isn't going to take me where I want to go. So say similar to a game, if I start to go, okay, cool, the further I get at it, you're right, the more I get the skills to then be able to beat the game. And then once I have those skills and I can start over, basically I'm better at it, right?
Yep.
But we have to learn that in business. We have to learn those skills and we have to keep going through, or we stay stuck at a level that we can't break through and can't get to ultimately what our goals are.
And that makes so much sense because and I do like the Mario example analogy as far as you could play the first level again and again and again, but that doesn't you have to play level two to actually beat level two, right? So absolutely makes a lot of sense. So just as a question then, so you're using this experience, you're using this this gamification. Uh, so what is an example of maybe like one of these boss fights that you've conquered on your journey making this marketing agency?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest ones is for me, well, there's probably several, but one of the biggest ones was learning to hire and delegate, and not be the only person doing everything. When you start, you have to kind of be doing everything if you don't have the resources to hire. And so you figure it all out on your own, which is fantastic. But then when you start hiring people, you can only go so far on your own. And you start hiring people and remembering that I need to be able to allow them to do what they need to do and
Right.
delegate to them. And I think the other one, like I said, is just having, I think I shared this with you earlier before we got, just having the patience to remember that these things take time. And
Yes.
oftentimes we have to keep grinding or keep putting in the work or keep doing the things without seeing an immediate payoff. And so remembering that we can focus on what we put in and the outputs will come at some point. But oftentimes we're moving so fast and we want what we want and we want things to happen faster than they
Right.
are going to happen.
There's definitely especially in this day and age, this focus on instant gratification, right? Where it's just like I do the thing, I get rewarded, right? Like that's how it works. And this I think is a big challenge for us as gamers that when you're playing a game, you do get that instant feedback. This is especially true in I guess in like the mobile gaming, right? Like you think like the Candy Crush and stuff like that, where everything rewards you immediately for what you do. So it's so much harder I'll say going out into the real world to say like, all right, you do something and then nothing happens, or at least not for a while. And I think there's definitely a struggle for that. So that sense of patience, of waiting for the thing to come, I think is definitely resonates with the gamer community as well, who's used to this instant feedback.
Right. And I think the thing to remember is, like I said, level one is usually the easiest, right? We get that instant feedback immediately, but the game gets harder, right? And it takes more skills, or you have to figure it out, or sometimes you have to get a team,
Yep.
all those sorts of things, right? The same thing happens. And so we just have to remember that we can focus and put different milestones in like focusing on accomplishments or giving ourselves the feedback, kind of the gratification in different ways. Because yes, at first, like when you get that first sale, maybe, yeah, you get that immediate instant gratification, and maybe the second, but then when you're like trying to get to half a million, $1 million, it takes a little bit longer than that first or second sale, right? So you have to make
Absolutely.
sure that you're finding different ways to get that gratification and get
Yep.
that feedback, really.
Yeah, and then so going back to that sense of team that you were talking about. So at what point did it make sense for you, and what sense I guess for others that may start like when do you start delegating? When do you start hiring to have people help you?
So I always say one of the biggest mistakes I made is I waited way too long to hire. So you do it before you're like working 20 hours a day and 7 days a week. I don't suggest
Before
that
then,
path.
okay.
But from a standpoint, it becomes a financial decision, obviously. But I generally think that most businesses can be solopreneurs pretty effectively, assuming they want to work a stand like 40 hours a week. Now if you want to work 2 hours a week, a totally different discussion, and you better have some money to put behind it. But
Yep.
Probably to at least to about $10,000 a month in income, you can pretty easily do it on your own. And then it becomes time to really find at least an assistant, or maybe you're handing off marketing or sales or something like that. So you're taking a big chunk of getting a big chunk of your time back so that you can start then actually working on building the business.
Oh, it makes perfect sense. No, thank you for that. So, as far as getting that success, so what is, and maybe what's an example of like marketing success that you've gotten for one of your clients, yeah, using this gamification method?
I'll give a couple different
Okay.
examples. The first one is one of the anybody starting out in business, it can be tough. And I remember starting as a single mom, and it was hard. The sales weren't always there. And I started exclusively as a text message marketing agency 16 years ago, and I was a little ahead of my time. So there was not a lot of business owners that understood text messaging and things like that. So I heard no more than I heard yes. It was very discouraging.
Yep.
And I remember it was like 2010, and we were kind of in the heart of the recession here in the US. And went to work at a coffee shop, and a coffee shop that I had worked at a lot. And I had become friends with the owners, and I'd asked them like several times, I'm like, you sure you don't want to try this marketing stuff? And they're like, nah, we're good. That particular day I walked in and they told me that they were basically going to be shutting down. They
Mm,
didn't have enough. And I was like, oh, well, you want to try it now? You really have nothing to lose, right? So, best sales pitch ever, I know. And
right.
they said yes. And so we started with simply running contests and ads. We started giving away like free coffee for a year is what we did. So we would get people to come in, and then we'd give them a coupon to come in, and again incentivize them to come in, and then we'd get them on a loyalty program. And then when they hadn't been there in 2 weeks, for example, they would get a text message that says, "Hey, we miss you," right?
Uh,
So we're like figuring out different touch points that we can bring people back in. And that was, it took time to turn around, but they ended up being one of the first success stories that kept me going, kept me in the game, because I didn't know if I wanted to stay in the game.
that's
Um,
fantastic. Yeah.
and then we've been able to, we work with a lot of groups on like the school platform, totally different thing, but it's a platform that is for building communities and teaching and educating,
Yeah.
and being able to gamify that based on what are you doing? So are you taking actions? Are you inviting people to join us in the group? Are you watching things in the classroom? So we've had a lot of success doing that. And that's kind of the difference between like gamifying in the brick and mortar type world and then
Right.
the online world.
Okay. Oh, that's really cool. And which and so you said school, that's like the Alex Hormozy
Yep.
platform, I believe. Yep.
Yes. Yes.
That's very cool. Yeah, very interested to hear more. I wish we had more time for understanding what all you could do with that, because that sounds really cool, really fun. So I guess for someone just trying to get into it, right, just starting out, maybe trying their own business and hear about this gamification thing, like, so I guess where would you start? Where's kind of the initial piece to say like, how can I get more engagement, more sales using gamification?
Right. I think the first thing to do is start with how can I get people to pay attention to me? Because if we don't have people paying attention to us, it becomes really hard to sell to people. So we find a way to incentivize people to pay attention to us, whether it be through a contest, through a giveaway, whether we're giving them something free, but we're saying, okay, what can I do to incentivize people to pay attention to me? And then if you can add a layer on top of that, that we can incentivize them to get other people to pay attention to me as well. So this is really common in invite a friend. So if you owned a gym and I'm going to give you a 50% discount and your friend a 50% discount if you bring a friend, right? So
Yep.
finding ways that we can actually get them involved in bringing people in will be the fastest way that you can start increasing your sales.
Okay, so it's really about rewarding that attention, like you said, just getting people in, whether it's refer a friend or contests. Yeah, just yeah, getting your message out there more. Okay,
That's like marketing 101.
right, but
No, yeah, no,
but
it's
the
funny
level of
though, because
incentives, right? That's the
right, really incentivizing, but also um for example, gyms will do boot camps, right? So they'll incentivize people to come in every single day. So that's a different level. It's like it's a login checkpoint and you're getting credits for that. So it's really figuring out what do people need? How can you incentivize them to take the step that you want them to take?
Gotcha. Well, fantastic. Well, I think that's about all the time we have for today. And so just wanted to hear, Amanda, where can people learn more and find you online?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you having me. It's been a blast to chat with you about this. I'm at Amanda R. Reed on all social media platforms, and you can always visit my website at reedmobilemarketing.com.
Fantastic. And one last question before you go. What is your favorite video game?
Mario Brothers.
Of course, you gotta love the classics. I love it.
Hey.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you so much, Amanda, for being here. And everybody, thank you so much for watching. And let me know what other topics you'd like to hear about in the comments below. So, guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.